to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Cindie Chavez here. Today is Tuesday, December the 12th, 2017 at 8:06 a.m. Got a little bit of a late start today because, well, technical issues came and bit me in the ear. Sometimes you just can't do anything that works it right. You have to just try to smile through it. That's the best you can do, Cindie.
That's the best you can do sometimes. I agree.
I mean, stuff happens in life. That's the nature of life.
Well, that is, and I think we have to be understanding that we're going to have some contrast occasionally, right?
Today's forecast, contrast, continuing mostly contrast.
Right. It happens.
It happens. Oh, my goodness.
It's Mercury retrograde, so we can blame it on Mercury.
Okay, all right. Well, it's a small planet, so I guess it's okay. So, anyway, how are you? Any wins in the last few days since I last talked to you? Well,
we had snow since I've talked to you. That was really, that doesn't happen here very often. And as a matter of fact, the last time I remember snow here, I want to say 2007.
Wow.
Maybe 2008. So we had snow, and that was fun. And so when we were getting ready for the call, and I was thinking about winds, it seems like a little thing, but snow can shut down our city.
Oh,
because
sure.
We're not prepared for it. We
Right.
don't have the infrastructure for it. No one has the proper, tires or whatever on their car. And so everything closes. The state offices close. The schools close. Businesses stay open. But we knew it was coming. And so I had been in the office that day, and I had been thinking about this experiment. I don't know if you're familiar with Pam Grout's book, E Squared.
I am not, no.
But in the book, it's a law of attraction book, and in the book there are experiments. She actually has two books, and I'm not sure which book this particular experiment was in, but she calls them energy experiments because she wants to prove that you can manifest your own reality. But she has a nice way of setting you up to you go into it in a very non-judgmental way, like you would an experiment. You just write the date and what you're expecting to happen, and then you write a note if it happened or not. And in one of the books, she had an experiment that was pennies from heaven. It's where you start focusing on finding pennies on the ground.
Okay.
And when you find one, you get excited about it. Or they might not be on the ground, but just finding pennies, right? Like the way you find a penny when you're walking in the street and, oh, look, a penny.
Sure.
And she says you get excited about it, not because you found, 1 cent or a penny, but what it represents. It represents wealth and abundance and money, whatever, and just celebrate it. And something that was said that day on Thursday, maybe today, or it's really a 3-day thing. It's like for the next 3 days, notice how many pennies you find. Well, I thought about it and decided to do it. And then we started getting caught up in, okay, we need to figure out what we're going to do to be ready for this snow because we're not going to be out doing we need to get it done like today after work. And so we decided to go pick up some groceries and do some things like that. And I completely forgot all about looking for pennies.
Uh-huh.
Until we're coming out of the grocery store, and we're literally like 5 feet from the car, and it hit me, and I thought, because here I've been walking all around, I've been in the grocery store, I've been in the parking lot, in the street, in the other parking lot, and I never thought to look for any pennies. And now I'm getting in the car, and I'm going to go home, and
right.
I'm going to probably stay home for the duration of the 3 days because it's going to be freezing. And so,
and even if you're out and about, there's going to be snow on the ground, so you still won't see the pennies.
Right. Right. And so, as I'm getting into the car, I have the thought, it's kind of like, I'll have to wait until the snow is gone. I should have been looking. And as I go to step in the car, there's the shiniest penny ever right there on the floorboard. It's like, and who knows how long it's been there, but I hadn't seen it, and it was so funny that I burst out laughing, and I thought, well, there's the celebration, right? It's like, I got so excited over that penny, you would have thought it was a $100 bill.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So that was fun. I was thinking about how how that feeling was so huge for such a small thing, and that got me thinking about the manifesting process and feeling what we feel, allowing ourselves to feel better, and all of the processes that we use to consciously create things, and the idea of using those processes not to manifest something, but to feel better.
Which, in my view, is a form of manifestation. And to be honest, one that I am focusing on particularly strongly today, because I've been, to cut to the nub of it, my wife needs to go to Rhode Island to visit friends. Unfortunately, one of her friends' parents died, so there's a funeral and all that. And that means that she's going to be gone for about 24 hours, something like that. And that doesn't make me comfortable. I like having her at home. I like having her nearby. And so when she's gone, it's like, well, I don't want her to be gone. So I've had to really been consciously focusing on, no. Can't do that, because all that really means is that I'm just out of alignment with my own source. I got to get back in alignment and start feeling good. Otherwise, I'll just be driving myself nuts, and who knows what crazy stuff I'll be manifesting. I definitely don't want to go that way. So, okay, recenter. What can I do? How can I get happy? And I said, oh yeah, I'm doing the podcast today. That's good.
Right. So that's a win for you already.
Absolutely. Oh, that's a big win. It's a win that I get twice a day, which I really like a lot. But yeah, getting that recentering is just so important. I mean, I have actually gotten to the point now, I can't remember the last time I really sat down to try to focus on consciously manifesting something. Because the only thing I've been trying to manifest lately is just feeling good. That's been my priority for, well over a month now. And by the way, about a month ago, I played your game without realizing it.
Oh. Talk about that.
Well, I didn't find a penny. I found a quarter and a dime. So I guess I got 35 of them out of the way in one fell swoop.
Well, there's that whole idea of especially for me as a relationship coach, as everything being a relationship. So we have a relationship with other people, but we have a relationship to our work, and a relationship to money, and a relationship to our body, and a relationship to ourself. There's everything is a relationship. And I remember this one time, because I always teach the kids, even though they're all pretty much grown now, but we still always talk about your relationship with money. Because some people, many of us, kind of make money the excuse for everything bad in the world. Right? It's like it's money's fault.
Something I'm familiar with. I have a lot of experience with that. I'm good at it.
One day, we were at a stop sign, and the car was stopped already, and he got out of the car because he looked out the window, and there was a quarter. And so he opened the door, popped out, grabbed the quarter, got in, said, a quarter, and one of the kids said, "You got out of the car for a quarter?" And the teenage age where it's like, "Oh, Dad, you're trying to embarrass me," right? Everything in our life is intentionally set up to embarrass all of the kids all the time.
Of course it is, yes.
No. Really just upset about that. How could you do that? Why would you do that? And so we had the whole discussion about, well, it's just a representation of money. And so we're being respectful, like we're recognizing money and that money has value. And hey, look, and it's about your relationship with money, that you honor and respect money, that you have a good relationship. So, that's important, how we perceive things, and the whole idea of feeling better, using processes. I like you used the word recentering this morning.
Yeah, that's been my word of the quarter or something like that. Recentering helps remind me what it is I'm really doing. Whenever I'm feeling any kind of negative emotion, it's a way of saying to myself, it's not because of what that person said or what you read over there or what you saw over there. It's because you're out of alignment. trying to remind myself it's not external. It's not all that stuff out there that I've been blaming all my life. I'm just not in alignment. I got to get back in alignment. So recenter myself.
That's the thing about when I call that sort of superstitious thinking, right? When we start to think that the things going on externally are what's causing our emotional state.
That really is, isn't it? It is superstition. I never thought of it that way, but it really is.
And so when we get into that superstitious thinking, and we all do this, right? We start, all of a sudden there's a story, and it's a story that we're telling ourselves in our head. We're creating this big, when we get into that loop, that is when, well, that's when we end up with a lot on our mind.
Yes.
Right? We're like, oh, I have a lot on my mind. Mostly it's just this big story that's led from one thing to another. And with your idea of that recentering, like coming back to our center and recognizing, yeah, it's not all this stuff out here, that's when we find clarity.
It's also when I find my power. I don't know about you.
Yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely, because as long as everything else externally to us is what's causing us to feel uncomfortable or bad or causing us to hate life, whatever, then we're at the mercy of everything else going on.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Yeah, and the moment that we're recentering,
non-empowered place to be. I mean, there's no power there.
No, not at all. In fact,
and I think I don't have it in front of me, but last week when we were talking about the emotional scale, powerless, I think that was at the very bottom.
It was pretty close. I know that. Yeah, I don't remember if it was right on the bottom, but it certainly wasn't anywhere near the top. I know that for sure.
Well, so something, when you said, it was funny when you said recenter. At first I thought you said reset, which I like that too. It's like push the reset button.
Well, it is a reset.
Which we've been doing this morning, right?
Yeah. Big time. Before we started this podcast, I was having all kinds of technical issues. When Cindie connected to start this thing, all of a sudden my sound system cut out, and all of a sudden I couldn't hear anything at all. And this is not a good thing when you're trying to do a podcast. So.
Yeah, sound is important for
sound
radio
is important.
And podcasting.
Yeah, it's funny how that works.
So I think that what I did was, and I thought, okay, I'm not gonna concern myself with like technical issues out into the future. I'm just going to think about now, like, what do we want for the next, how long is the next segment? What is this segment that I'm defining? It's the radio show today. It's the podcast today. It's the next hour. And what's the intention? Well, the only intention that I can make that I have agency over is to be clear and happy and, recognizing that, hey, life happens. And we're just going to go into it expecting something great.
Yeah, life happens. I like that phrase because what it really means is a more extended thing. Life happens, and how life affects you has nothing to do with life. It has to do with you. So life may happen. How are you going to react to it? If you're going to react like life is against you, guess what? Life is against you. If you're going to react like, it's no big deal and it's going to just roll off your shoulders, then it just rolls off your shoulders. I mean, the worst thing, what the worst thing was that happened this morning with this technical glitch? The worst thing was we started 4 minutes late. That was it. That was the entire problem for the day. Well, did I lose you? Well, maybe not the only problem for the day. Maybe there's another one going on here. Because suddenly, Cindie seems to have... She's still connected. Cindie, I can hear you. Or you can hear me, I presume. Rather, I can't hear you. We can't hear you. Something funny going on here. I'm going to try... I just want to see if the music is working. Let me try playing the music. Yep, the music is playing. So the sound system works. I can see my meters, so that's working. All I can think is, Cindie, why don't you call me right back? And let's see if we can reconnect you and figure out what the heck is going on here. And get past this thing. Now, of course, the moment that I start talking about technical issues is the moment that this happens, right? I don't know if Cindie can hear me or not. She's still connected. All right, I'm going to disconnect Cindie, and hopefully she's going to call right back. Wow, what a morning this is. February 12th. This is going to be a day to remember. In fact, I think I'll try to contact her. Let's see if I can remake this connection. Boy, if we're not living what we're talking about right now, I don't know who is, because this is the kind of thing that happens. You know, you have all of your ducks in a row, so you think, and then all of a sudden the unexpected comes out of nowhere and affects you, and this is your opportunity, or our opportunity, to deal with it. So let's see if we can deal with it successfully. So I'm calling. Looks like I'm connected. Cindie. Ah, there you are.
Can't take your call now. At the tone, please record your message. When you have finished recording, simply hang up or press the pound.
Are you there?
I'm here.
Oh my goodness, I should never have brought up the technical issue. The moment I did, all heck broke loose.
I have no idea what's going on. I don't know when you lost me or when my call dropped.
Oh, well, I forcibly dropped the call because we just couldn't hear you. All my sound was showing up. I could play sounds. Everything was working at this end. It's just that your sound dropped out for some reason. So
I don't know. So okay.
So I won't mention the T. The T word is now banned.
Okay. Deep breath.
That's right.
I was thinking about the whole good luck, bad luck story. Do you know that story?
Tell me.
Well, it's a parable about an old parable about a Chinese farmer who is a peasant and very poor and only owns one horse. And his horse runs away from his work. It's really his only thing he has of value, and it runs away. And his neighbors all say, "Oh, what bad luck." And he says, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" And a week later, his horse returns with a dozen wild stallions that are the most beautiful horses ever, and they all come. And the neighbors say, "Oh, what good luck." And he says, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" So a short time after that, his son is riding one of the horses, the wild horses, trying to tame it, and it throws him and he breaks his leg. And of course, all the neighbors say, "Good luck, what bad luck?" And he says again, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" And then the province goes to war, and all of the young sons have to go, but his son doesn't have to go because his leg is broken. And of course, all the neighbors again say, "What good luck?" And he says, "Good luck, bad luck, who knows?" And it's the idea that there isn't ever anything ending. Everything is always followed by something else. And it's not really the idea that, every time something good happens, there's something bad right behind it. That's really not the idea. It's just that we label things good or bad, and we really never know what's going to come behind it. There's an idea that a lot of life coaches will mention that if you talk to someone and find something going on in their life that's just fantastic, if you start leading back where that thing came from, it will almost always lead back to something that was really not fantastic. Some kind of experience that was really a downer. And so I remind myself of that anytime things don't seem to be going well. It's good luck, bad luck, who knows?
Who knows? That's true. In fact, the last bit that you mentioned there reminded me of something that Joel liked to talk about a lot. He is famous practically, especially among friends in his circle, of saying things like, the best thing that ever happened to me was that I had to eat out of a dumpster. Which sounds really weird.
Wow. Exactly.
That sounds really, really weird. But in his mind, it's completely true. He was a recovering gambling addict. At that point in his young life, he had lost his job. He had gambled all his money away. He was in Las Vegas. He had no place to live. He had no money to get around. And he was just absolutely desolate and broke, and in every possible way, in the worst possible way. Plus, he was still an addict, and he literally had to eat out of a dumpster of McDonald's, and it was certainly the low point of his life, but everything from that point on improved dramatically. In fact, it was shortly after that he was exposed to the law of attraction by an associate, by somebody he met, and one thing led to another, to the point where now he is a psychotherapist who uses the law of attraction heavily in his therapy and is extremely successful. And, of course, who does he help as much as he can? Other gambling addicts. So
right.
just a complete turnaround story. And so he absolutely embraces and loves the fact that he has that experience in his background. He credits it with having given him the springboard he needed in order to get to where he is today.
That's interesting that you use the word springboard, because there's a concept called the slingshot, and it's that whatever it is that has pulled you back, that we view as this thing holding you back. If you picture a slingshot where you're pulling back, that all of that energy is exactly the energy that can propel you forward.
This is true, because that's the way a slingshot works.
And so that sounds like, exactly what you're saying about him. And I see that with so many things, and it doesn't have to be big things. Like, that's a major, huge...
Yeah, that's a gigantic one. And he had a few of those.
Thing, but
yeah. Even
with small things, it's that whole... I don't know, that story of good luck, bad luck probably helped me more than anything that I can think of, to really be able to let the good feelings back in when things don't seem to be going well, because it's like, oh yeah, good luck, bad luck. This could be the start of something big.
Yeah, right.
This could lead to something really awesome. So let's just relax. But I was thinking about, before the call dropped, the whole idea of alignment for alignment's sake. You said, well, that's really the only reason why I'm doing these things is to feel better.
Yeah.
In the moment.
Right.
And there are so many people that get very discouraged when they put into place some kind of method for manifesting, and they don't see the result that they want right away. I mean, I know I get a lot of emails like, what am I doing wrong?
Right. Yeah.
And I was thinking about a conversation that I had years and years ago when I first started understanding law of attraction, and when one of my mentors talked about alignment for alignment's sake. When you do a practice to get, aligned with whatever that thing is, that needs to be the goal, is just the alignment, for no other reason, not to create something, not to manifest something, just to be in alignment with it. And when you get aligned, you feel better.
Yes. That's almost the unexpected part about it, because so often, especially if we're trying to manifest things that seem large to us because of our own resistance, we tend to keep them away. So that tends to create a feeling of, well, it doesn't always work or so forth. But when your only interest is in alignment, it always works, because you always find a way to get yourself to feel better. So you feel like this thing's always working no matter what. It reinforces the very thing we need to reinforce most in our subconscious and conscious minds,
Right. And I remember having this conversation where this person was not in agreement with me at all, and they weren't necessarily a law of attraction, practitioner, so to speak, but they weren't against it either. They were interested in it, and that's why we were having the discussion, and they were excited by it, but it was pushing them too far to have them say yes to just alignment for alignment's sake, because they were like, no, I don't want to just be able to just feel like I have whatever this thing is. I want the actual thing. I'm not going to be happy till the actual thing happens. I'm not going to just sit here and be content with feeling better just because I'm imagining that thing. And they couldn't get their mind around feeling better to feel better. And yet, recently, I had that experience of more and more and more just feeling so excited in the alignment process itself that I'm like, yeah, I'm fine with this. I'm so fine with just alignment for alignment's sake. And it reminds me of really why, well, you were talking about someone that's an addict. Addicts, generally speaking, are doing whatever they're addicted to, whether it's, alcohol, drugs, gambling, video games, shopping. I mean, people are, it's not just things that are frowned upon that people get addicted to. Right?
Oh, absolutely.
They get addicted to all kinds of things. And it's always to feel better.
Right.
Right? And it's like that. It's like when someone goes and says, I'm going to drink a cocktail, and I'm not against drinking a cocktail. I have a cocktail occasionally, and there's never any, like, end point to it. Like, I'm going to have this drink, and then something, great is going to manifest. I'm going to have a glass of wine, and then I'm going to look out, and there's going to be a brand new car in the driveway. I mean, I don't have thoughts like that. It's just, it'd be nice to have a glass of wine. It's its sole fulfillment is that this will be nice to have a glass of wine.
Yeah, that's the goal. Just feeling better.
To me, it's the same kind of thing, right? It's like, I'm going to take 20 seconds and think about whatever it is, just because it feels so good to think about it.
Yeah, why would you not want to feel good? That's the thing that I don't understand. I mean, I do understand. I understand the mindset that says, I want to manifest stuff and I want it right now. It's not a healthy mindset, but I understand it. I've been there a lot.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we all have. I mean, that's why it's a good conversation, because everybody's like, I can, everybody that's into conscious creation or law of attraction and has tried any of these methods, I mean, that's why we go into it generally. It's like, I want my life to be different.
But the fact is, and I'm sure that the person you were referencing wasn't thinking about this when they said, I don't want to spend time being happy. I just want it to manifest. They didn't realize there's a direct contradiction in what they said.
Right, exactly.
I expect stuff to manifest without feeling in alignment. Like, no, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work. But we don't hear that in ourselves.
When I was in coaching school, and this is the very beginning, like the very, very beginning, it might have even been like a pre-class, and we were, had 25 of us or so in the classroom, and we were like given this assignment of think of something that you really want. And everyone was so serious, it's like we were thinking about something we really wanted, and then, okay, now, they gave us like 20 minutes or 30 minutes, like, to write how write about what we wanted and how we were going to feel once that thing came to be. Mm-hmm. And everyone's just furiously writing. The room is quiet. Everyone's writing. And then it was like, time up. And then they said, what if we told you that you could just feel that way now and you didn't have to wait for all of this stuff to happen? And everyone in the room was like, oh, like you just, everybody felt ripped off. I think it's like, really? No, it's so not fair. We were so amped up about this thing we were going to create. We were just madly writing. And then, you don't have to do all that. You can just feel that way now.
That's funny. That's really funny. Actually, it reminds me of a Far Side cartoon. And I'm not quite sure why, because it isn't a perfect parallel. But when I describe the cartoon, you'll certainly see where the parallel is. It's a cartoon of a guy who's in hell. You can tell he's in hell because there's flames all over the place, and there are two devils up on a catwalk looking down at this guy who's sweeping. I don't know why, but he's sweeping hell. Okay? And as he's sweeping, he's whistling. And he's got this big smile on his face. And he's whistling and doing his work and so forth. And the one devil turns to the other and says, I don't think we're getting through to him.
No, it is appropriate. It's exactly right. That's where we need to be, right? That's great. I love it. I love Gary Larson and the Far Side. Oh, he's
wonderful. Yeah. Yeah, but that's actually one of my favorite Far Side. That one and the one of the field full of sheep where one sheep stands up and says, I gotta be me!
It's so great. I remember I used to live in San Francisco, and the Far Side was in the newspaper. This is really telling because it was so long ago. And when I moved to Louisiana, the paper that we got didn't have the Far Side. So I actually subscribed. I had to have my fix of Gary Larson.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's like, I was sad when he pulled back and stopped writing as often. In fact, is he still doing cartoons? I can't remember if he is or not. But
I don't know. I know
he
retired, so to speak, and I know the books were around. But that's an interesting thing is, taking the time to identify things that make us smile and laugh.
Oh, yes. Yes.
We talked about that a week or so ago about when my dad had cancer, how we all went into overdrive on
telling the jokes.
A comedy campaign. It was like, send him jokes, watch funny movies, and make him laugh. We are going to do a good thing for all of us to do.
Yeah. Oh, I am actually trying to do that in a sense. That's one of the motivations for me with the podcast, because I figure, I mean, for the longest time, I was really struggling trying to figure out how to get myself into the positive zone. I understood the stuff that Abraham said about, go for one step better and all that kind of thing. And I would try to do that, but I didn't feel like I was getting anywhere. I just had this innate feeling, this deep down feeling that I needed to do whatever I could to be feeling happy regularly throughout the day. And that was one of the motivations for doing the podcast. So I'm lining up all these different activities to try to feel good throughout the day. And as I have been pursuing this and actually succeeding and getting more and more things going on in my day that do make me feel good, I'm finding that my intuition was correct, that I really do feel better, and that it improves not only my ability to deal with conflict and with contrast and unexpected dramas and so forth, and let them roll away a whole lot faster than I used to, but also the manifesting part starts to kick in, and it was almost like it was an extra. I first started looking at this stuff because I wanted to manifest stuff. Now it's an extra. It's like a bonus on top. It's like
that's great.
It's like
that's
the
great
cherry,
because there's an ongoing intention just to feel better.
Yes, and
the other stuff's just the bonus.
It is a bonus, and the more that I look at it that way, the more good things happen. That's the unexpected part.
And doesn't it seem so backwards to look at it the other way? Like
it does.
Well,
now.
I'll be happy. It's like I'll worry about being happy once I get all this other stuff going. It's like, wait a minute, that's really backwards. The other stuff will come to you so much easier if you just focus on being happy.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the more that I focus on being happy and nothing else is when the best stuff happens regularly. And it's only when I fall back, when I slip, and despite all the things I'm doing, I allow myself to go into some sort of melancholy or whatever. That's when all the bad stuff happens. Not all of it, some of it. I mean, occasionally, like, I get technical issues on radio shows, but other than that...
Oh, you said the T word.
Oh, no.
Okay, so I have a question for you then. If the goal is to just to feel better,
yep.
just to be happy
okay.
in the moment, what would you say are the top three, I don't know what to call them, I almost said tricks, tips, tricks, tools, methods, ideas, what are the top three things that you use to turn things around when you realize that you're falling down that emotional scale and not staying at the good feeling part at the top?
Well, part of it depends on what I'm doing and where I am. So if I'm in a place, for instance, where I can get outside, I can take some time and go take a walk, that's probably my favorite one. Just to get outside and take a walk. Because that almost always gets me feeling really good fast, particularly if I bring my iPhone and plug in my headphones and listen to some happy music along the way. But that's probably my number one. Number two, because I don't have a whole lot of control just yet about how often I do it, would be the podcast, because I love doing the podcast. And then third one is just having a selection of things to either listen to or look at when I'm really struggling. And I just need to have some sort of quick pick-me-up. So, for instance, there is an episode of Inside the Actors Studio on Bravo TV where Robin Williams appeared, and the first 10 to 15 minutes of that are absolutely hysterical. So, even though I've seen it, 50, 60 times, because I haven't seen it in a couple months, I've forgotten some of it. So I play it again, I get laughing, and I get feeling better. And, yeah, those are my three best ones. Plus, my wife and I... we'll try to do what we call the 3 gratitudes at the end of each day. So if I'm struggling during the day, I'll try to, plan ahead. Okay, so what are my gratitudes going to be that I'm going to bring up tonight when we do our 3 gratitudes? So there's 4.
Oh, that reminds me of something that happened that I thought was really cool, and I actually developed it into a little. I have a PDF of it, but I call it the Fabulous 5 Senses Meditation.
Ooh.
And I have people do this like as they're falling asleep, because you can do this in your head and it only takes a few seconds, and you've already done all your nighttime ritual stuff. This is like when at that moment where you're like, okay, I'm going to sleep now. So there's no excuses is what I'm saying.
Oh, I say yes.
People can't say, well, I don't have time or whatever. And what it is it's a gratitude practice of 5 things that you're thankful for that you experienced that day, and it's one for each of the 5 senses. So something that you saw, something you smelled, something you tasted, something you heard, and something you touched.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first started doing this, I realized that it was always my sweet, fluffy little puppy that I was snuggling up to touch, and it was the morning coffee that smelled so good. And after, I finally thought, okay, I have to change this up. I can't let myself do the same 5 things every single night.
Sure.
Even though I really am grateful for coffee and chocolate and my puppy, and I have to change it up. So the first couple nights was really hard. I was like, oh, I can't go with the puppy again. Like, what else? But what I noticed is that I noticed this because I had an experience where someone brought me roses, and the first thing in my head, I leaned down and they smelled so amazing. And the first thing in my head was, oh, I can use this for my gratitude practice tonight for the smell. And then it hit me that over that course of the next, week or two, that my mind, and that's that reticular activation system.
Right.
My mind was saying, oh, look at that. That's got to go on your list tonight for beautiful things that you've seen. Or, listen to that bird chirping. That's going to go on your list. And I realized that all of my senses were starting to pay attention for things to use in that practice.
That's really good to point out about the RAS, the reticular activation system, because that for people who don't know, that's the part at the brainstem that does the filtering, so that when you don't see that penny on the ground, it's because of your RAS. You're not looking for it. Your RAS is filtering out anything that doesn't match what it's supposed to be looking for or what it thinks it's supposed to be looking for. And the fact that we can reprogram it, the way you just described beautifully, shows that we can actually use that RAS to our advantage. It can actually get us to the point where all we're looking for is good things that are going on, which I love.
Exactly. I always explained that RAS as, I could have a branch, and I did at one point, a branch that when it was windy at night would sort of tap on my window. And it didn't wake me up because my reticular activation system wasn't triggered by it, because I knew that was a normal sound. But if someone were to come knock on that window, even though the sound would be really similar, I would probably wake up because my reticular activation system, or RAS, would know, yeah, that's not normal. It's part of our brain that's really made to keep us safe. And also, I don't know the number, but it's the number of information bits that come at us every day is so huge. We couldn't survive if we couldn't filter them. So we filtered most of them out.
Right. Yes.
I was explaining my best, funnest story about RAS was I was explaining this to a friend of mine. I was in California visiting her, and I said, you know how when you get a new car and like you've never seen a car like this in your neighborhood, and then you're driving your new car home and you see like 10 of them on the way home. It's like, oh no, they're everywhere, the same color, the same make. And she said, oh yeah, well, that wouldn't happen to me because my car is like a late model, whatever, and it has a gold package, and who would put a gold package on a car like this? Like, you're not going to see it. No one bought these cars. Like, you're not going to see it. I said, okay. So about 10 minutes later, we left to go to brunch, and round trip, we only drove 2 miles, and we saw like 4 cars like hers. With the gold package, same year, same color, everything, and we could not stop laughing, and she was just blown away by it. But it really does make a difference. So when I started doing the meditation practice and I started realizing that it was filtering into my whole day where I was noticing things, that's when I actually typed it up and started using it with clients, because what I realized is that the quickest way to bring yourself back into the present moment is to tap into your senses. What's the temperature in the room? Can you feel your clothes on your skin? Are there any smells going on? I mean, that's how we bring ourselves back to present moment awareness. And remember, our fears and worries are are always attached to the past or the future. So we want to stay in the present moment and feel good now.
Mm-hmm.
And so those five senses are important, and an exercise like this causes us to always be paying attention to what the five senses are doing. So it was like a real life changer for me to start doing that and opening up that awareness.
Sure. Oh, yeah. I remember the first time, too, that we talked about the reticular activating system on this program. It was back when my sister-in-law, Yuona, was serving as my co-host. And she's currently pursuing a PhD in the research sciences. I can't tell you which one because it changes every few months. But the point is that she's still pursuing that. And of course, she reads lots of research. She does a lot of research. And she was explaining a lot of the stuff that she'd learned about the reticular activating system. And as we were talking about that, it hit me at that point with something that I've never forgotten, which is if we have all this stuff going on in our lives, stuff going past us that we're not even noticing, how do we know then that if we tried to attract something, it didn't show up?
That's right. That's right.
Because if you're not focusing on it at that moment in time, and if you've actually filtered it out, if your system has filtered out whatever that thing is you're trying to attract, it could be there and you don't even see it.
Well, that's true.
Which is
and
very
actually,
annoying.
That happens all the time because we get excited when we have a synchronicity, which that is a synchronicity, right?
Right.
Me telling my friend about her, or my friend telling me that we'll never see this late model, car with a gold package in this color, and then we see a bunch of them. Synchronicities are always happening.
Right.
We just don't notice them.
Yeah.
And so what happened there? Well, we were synced up to those cars, and we noticed them. So you're right. I mean, the things that we are creating, they're always being created. We just sometimes filter them out. This is how we can train ourselves to
yeah.
notice.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It kind of reminds me. Do you remember the book by Richard Bach? It was a novel called Illusions. Have you ever read that?
One I don't know of.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's an older book. It was published in, like, the 1970s, something like that. And so it was before the phrase law of attraction had even been invented. But he was clearly onto the same concept. The story is perhaps not perfectly in line with what Abraham would teach, but it has a lot of the elements of it. And it's a story of this guy. It's sort of semi-autobiographical because the lead character has the same name as the author, Richard. And Richard is a biplane pilot who's flying around the Midwest, giving airplane rides to people. And so he'll, fly into a farm, find a farm field that's a nice level field to land on the field, go find the farmer, ask permission to do some takeoffs and landings there, and then give people rides for, of all things, $3. That was the price of his rides. Anyway, the story is how another pilot doing the same kind of barnstorming comes along and lands beside him, and they get to know each other. And this other pilot in the story is a master or a sort of a savior type character. And the story is about how Richard learns from this guy and how his name is Donald, and how Donald basically teaches Richard what the good and bad side of being a messiah is, but also how he manifests things, how he can make clouds disappear and reappear, and how he can, make bugs that have died on the windshield of the plane, wake up and fly away and things like that. So there's a whole lot of kind of, in some ways, fanciful manifesting going on. Anyway, Donald sets Richard the task of trying to manifest something. And so Richard, he says, think of something that you'd like to attract. And Richard says, okay, a blue feather. And Donald looks at him, a blue feather? Really? Okay, well, whatever. So hold it in your mind. He goes through the whole exercise. Hold it in your mind, visualize it, all that kind of thing, and then let it go. And then about 2 chapters later, they're sitting in a restaurant, and Richard points excitedly at a milk carton, and it says, Blue Feather Dairies on it. And Donald says, I thought you wanted the actual feather. Well, whatever. You got your blue feather. Did you actually hold it in your hand and put a glow around it, or make it part of you? No, I didn't do that. Oh, well, that's why it came this way. Okay, well, at least we know what happened. They're talking about this like it's this normal thing, and I'm thinking to myself as I'm reading this, How on earth did he notice a dairy product that says Blue Feather Dairies on it? But it shows just how important it is. Who knows how many times we run into something that has something as bizarre as Blue Feather Dairies on it, and we don't even notice it. I'm not saying that Blue Feather Dairies, Blue Feather Dairies shows up everywhere. I'm sure there aren't all that many named Blue Feather Dairies, but nevertheless, how many things like that happen that we don't normally notice because we aren't trying to manifest it at that particular moment in time? It's
right, and we're just not paying attention.
We're just not paying attention, no. And the RS is filtering it out anyway, because as you pointed out, if we got inundated with all the stuff that does come to our senses, we would probably be autistic. We probably wouldn't be able to handle it.
It would just be too much. I mean, I actually read an article, and I always wish I could pull up this number, but it had the number of pieces of information that are available to us at any given time, and it was ridiculous.
Somebody counted it. Wow.
Huge number, yeah. And there's just no way we could take it all in. So it actually is, it protects us from too much information. And at the same time, like you said, when we know about it and learn about it, we can start using it in a conscious way.
Right. Yeah, and that's the art. It's an art and a science all wrapped in one, trying to learn how to basically control our minds and focus on stuff deliberately and as exclusively as we know how to do. And doesn't happen quickly. I can tell that from experience. I mean, the first few times I tried to do stuff like this, I was lucky if I could concentrate on it for 2 or 3 seconds. I don't know about you, but that was about my limit when I first started. I have gotten considerably better at it since then, but I was amazed how short my attention span was when I was trying to focus on what I wanted to manifest. I couldn't believe it.
Well, that's the thing, is that it takes practice.
It does.
And focus is the key, and being able to hold the vision for something. And I think Abraham says 17 seconds.
Yeah, right. That's how long it takes to get it started. Yeah.
And that can seem like a really long time when we're not used to holding a vision, when we're not used to having to really focus. But when we do that, we are taking control of our own mind. It's a meditative practice. It's like when you meditate, a lot of people say, "Oh, I can't meditate because my mind wanders," but that's okay, because that's what meditation is bringing your mind back. It's like you said earlier, recenter.
Recenter,
right?
Yeah.
When our mind wanders, we bring it back, and pretty soon we get better at it, where our mind isn't wandering every 2 seconds. Maybe it's wandering every 5 seconds now, or every 10. It's all the same stuff. It's just being able to hold that focus, and until we feel better.
And
it doesn't have to take very long. I mean, it can be quick. But the more we practice, the better we get at it. That's why experiments like the pennies on the ground, pennies from heaven, whatever we call that, we'll see more and more of them once we get rolling with it, because we just become able to focus on it, and we start noticing them more.
And
I always get the picture in my head, I think, wow, the entire ground is just covered with pennies everywhere. I just can't see them.
I remember when I first started trying to control my mind, trying to direct it deliberately, and noticing that I could only do it for 2 seconds at a time. And then after kind of beating my head against it for a while, I could get up to 5 seconds. And I said, woohoo, 5 seconds. All right, well, we're making progress here. And then I get up to 10 seconds. And, it took, we're not talking like hours. We're talking days, weeks to get this far. And finally, I was getting up to the point where I could actually focus on something for like 30 seconds or a minute. And then I started to feel like, wow, I actually did it. I did something that I didn't think I could do. I've actually improved it to 30 seconds or a minute. So at some point, it went from, oh, well, whoop-de-doo, to, oh, wow, I actually did it. And from that point on, the acceleration was tremendous, just because I was celebrating it.
And it takes practice. We've got a lot of things pulling our attention away.
Oh, tons of them.
Right? Especially in the world that we live in today, with screens everywhere, TV screens, phone screens, computer screens, all these things that are all vying for our attention. And so I think that's why it's important to spend at least some time, like you go for your walks.
Yes.
I have a place in my office where I like to meditate and just tune everything else out, and practice on focusing, practice on being able to hold that vision for more than 2 seconds. And it does. No, it's not something that you can just do in an hour. It takes time. It takes days. It might take weeks or months to get to where you're really, consistently able to hold that vision. But that's where the magic starts to happen.
Mm-hmm. That's right. In fact, you mentioned a word there that it isn't directly in the context of what we're talking about. I thought I mentioned it anyway, though. You mentioned the screens that we see everywhere. Did you ever notice those screens don't actually screen anything out?
Good point.
It's like they're not properly named. We need to name them something else, like inundators or sensory overloaders or something.
They are just fire hoses of information coming at us.
I mean, screening is fanciful compared to what they do.
Right? That's a good point. Never thought about it before.
But this whole thing about regaining control of our minds and learning how to control our focus is simultaneously frustrating and empowering. Well, maybe not simultaneously, but at various times it is frustrating. At other times it's empowering. At other times it's daunting. At other times it's incredible. At other times it's serendipitous. It's an adventure in itself, just paying attention to our own process of learning how to gain that control.
Yeah, I totally agree. But it's like you said, at some point a switch goes on.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, wow, I'm doing it. Yay.
I'm doing it.
Like
Yay.
when you ride a bike, right? All of a sudden you turn around and there's no one helping you. When I learned to ride a bike, I turned around, hey, Dad, and my dad was way down the street. I thought he was holding the back of my bike.
Right,
and suddenly,
right.
Hey, I'm doing it. I'm doing this on my own. So
Yep. Yeah.
It takes practice.
It does take practice, and it does feel good. And it's a good reminder, too, that when you do have something like that works and you're realizing that it works, that's when it's important to have a little celebration. Because I didn't do that at first. I think that's why it took me so long to learn how to begin to master it. Because I wouldn't give myself little rewards along the way. I was a stoic male. I wasn't supposed to do that. That's what the male training teaches us. That teaches us don't express a whole lot of positive emotion.
Yeah.
Except it's wrong.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it is. It is. And you're right. I have a little meme that I made for one of the groups I run. It says celebration is a basic human need. Oh,
it is. It is. And it's also, it's a, what would I call it? It's a reinforcer. It kind of cements whatever the accomplishment was in so that it doesn't disappear next time, Like you try to recapture it the next time. If you don't celebrate it, it's like, well, how did I do that? But if you celebrate it, the next time around, all of a sudden it's much more accessible, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think we actually are training our brain to know, what's worthy and what's important.
Yes. And not only what's worthy and what's important, what we prefer. That's the most powerful concept that I think Abraham teaches. This whole life experience is about us deciding what we prefer and what we don't prefer. And the whole contrast thing is simply to give us the choices so we can decide, I prefer this, I don't prefer that. It's the preference.
Right, something that's contrast for me might not be contrast for you.
That's right. We could have different preferences, and that's okay.
Yep.
In fact, it's actually what makes the world more interesting, because when we have different preferences, now we have even more contrast to look at and even more stuff to compare. It's like, wow, why does she like that so much? I never really liked that. And we have the ability to either ignore it and say, well, I would never like something like that, or we could say maybe she's got something there. Who knows?
Try something new.
Try something new. But the point is, we get the choice. And when you have that kind of choice available to an entire population of people at all times, and combined with the fact that we can only really manifest for ourselves, we really can't manifest for anybody else, that eliminates a whole lot of the angst that goes on in society. Because so much of it is about stealing other people's power or imposing power on somebody else or trying to make other people behave the way we want them to behave or all that kind of thing. And it's so nowhere. It gets us nowhere at all. Replace that with a feeling of power and a feeling that we can actually live by our own preferences and have a happy life as a result, the entire dynamic changes in society, I think, when that starts to get adopted on a widespread basis.
And it also opens up this whole vista of possibilities.
Oh, huge.
Because now anything is possible because it's just up to us and what we prefer. That's that's exciting.
It is exciting, isn't it? It's like every single day is Christmas, and you don't know what the next gift's going to be.
That's right.
So anyway, we actually have managed to get through the episode. By the way, did you notice how everything settled down on the episode once we stayed away from the T word?
Yeah, it did.
It all settled down. I mean, there have still been little minor, glitches along the way, but for the most part, it went pretty well after that. So I'm grateful that happened. But before we leave everything behind here, we haven't done any of our commercial messages. So here's our commercial messages for the day, and you're going to like these because we're not selling Toyotas or ice cream or anything like that. We're just selling podcasts. We're saying, please just sign up for the free podcast, and that's it. It doesn't cost you anything. But it's how you can keep up and follow what's happening every single episode with all of our co-hosts every single day, because we're doing this 5 days a week, and in fact, twice a day, plus once on Sunday. To subscribe, you go to loatoday.net. There's subscribe buttons all over the place there. You can also subscribe if you're on your iPhone by going to the iTunes store or by just going to the podcast software, either one, and do a search with the little magnifying glass for LOA Today. And if you're on an Android phone, same thing, but just go to Google Play because we're also in Google Play. So go to Google Play, click on the magnifier, and type in LOA Today, and boom, we'll pop right up there. So subscribe any of those different ways so you can keep following us because, hey, we're having fun, but we want you to have fun too. That's why we want to give you your daily dose of happy. And, that's what it's all about. And the other thing I wanted to mention, Cindie, we got to start pushing people on sharing us on social media because we want to build this thing fast, right? We want to have more and more people involved in what we're doing. So a few ways to do that. One, if you have a social media account of some kind, it doesn't matter what the service is. I don't care. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I don't care what you use. It doesn't make any difference. Just share. If you're enjoying the show, just say, hey, I'm listening to LOA Today, and it's a pretty good show. Here's why I like it. That activity done by more and more of our listeners is what continues to grow our base, our listener base. And the listener base is growing, Cindie. I don't know if I told you. We actually hit a new high. We reached 9,000 plays since a year ago November as of this past Saturday.
Yay! That's a milestone.
It's a big milestone. And
yeah.
We're well on our way to 10,000. I mean, it took something like 2 or 3 months to get our first 1,000. And we're going to be at 10,000 in about 2 weeks.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yay.
So it's
working.
Yeah,
tell your friends.
Yeah, people are listening and they're subscribing, and that makes me happy because I get to keep doing the podcast, and Cindie, you get to keep doing the podcast, and it's fun to have listeners.
Exactly.
So there's our commercial message. Also, if somebody wants to reach out to you, Cindie, if they're looking for a private session, because sometimes that can be really helpful when you're still trying to figure all this stuff out, how can they reach you?
They can find me on the interwebs at cindiechavez.com. It's CINDIECHAVEZ.com. That's where I am. Reach out and say hello.
The interwebs. I like that.
And I'm also on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all those places. And it's always just my name, Cindie Chavez, CINDIECHAVEZ. Come find me.
Very good. I like the spelling of your name, too, the CINDIE. That's nice.
Thank you.
So anyway, let's do this again tomorrow. We'll do it without the T word.
None of that. None of that stuff.
I'm looking forward to it.
It's going to be smooth sailing tomorrow. We're going to pre-pave it.
I'm looking forward to it. And we'll invite you all back as well. We'll see you tomorrow here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.